Welcome.
Thank you. All right.
Anyone else want to introduce himself?
Sure. My name is Chelsea. I'm here with Bobby and the rest of my team, and I'm also really excited to have a chance to go through some of this information and have a good discussion afterwards.
And I'm Jordy, and thank you so much for coming today and having us. It's very exciting.
Yeah. Hi, and I'm Laura. Rounding at the end of our 181 consulting here. Thank you for listening to our proposal today.
Yeah, you're all welcome.
So why is vaccine inequity an important topic? Vaccines are a marvel of modern medicine. It's amazing to me that we can prevent some of the most serious diseases known to man. Before inoculation, smallpox killed millions of people each year. Today, no one dies of smallpox. In 1934, 7,500 Americans died from whooping cough. Last year, it was less than 20 thanks to vaccines. And Moderna is at the forefront of a revolution in vaccine technology. You've delivered 1.5 billion doses of new mRNA vaccines for COVID-19 to a very grateful public. Vaccines reduce healthcare costs, prevent economic damage from disease, and reduce the risk of dangerous mutations. Reducing the rate of mortality in high-risk populations is a key part of the vaccine programs. Vaccination is such a powerful tool that it actually rivals primary education for social development. So if vaccines are such a force for good, what's the ethical challenge here? Think about COVID-19. Low and middle income countries make up 80% of the world's population, but receive just 16% of the world's COVID-19 vaccines. We're going to show you how inadequate supply was a main driver of that vaccine inequity. And in fact, this also contributes to undermining the international patent laws that the modern pharmaceutical industry is built on. So vaccine inequity is not a new problem. We saw it with H1N1. We've seen it with many diseases in the past. So the World Health Organization tried to change this outcome for COVID-19. In April 2020, we launched COVAX for coordinated procurement of vaccines across the globe with the goal of vaccine equity. COVAX struggled though because self-preservation is a very powerful motivator and high-income countries wanted to protect their citizens first. By February 2021, 4 to 5 pre-order doses were destined for a high-income country. But COVAX had another strategy. They wanted to tackle the bottleneck in manufacturing directly. So they launched the mRNA Vaccine Technology Transfer Hub with Afrigen in South Africa. The goal of this program was to coordinate licensing and training from pharmaceutical companies like Moderna with mRNA technology and the low and middle income countries that were struggling to get enough vaccine. We would put production facilities right in these countries. However, none of the major pharmaceutical companies, including Moderna, wanted to participate. At the time, Mr. Bancel, you felt that your efforts were better served in-house. You wanted to accelerate your own programs. But the Afrigen Hub carried on without you. And in February of 2022, they announced that they had a fully functional mRNA prototype vaccine based off of Moderna's technology. Producers like Afrigen have the potential to be incredible partners for Moderna or fierce competition. The main challenge for Afrigen right now that's keeping them from mass production for underserved markets is your patents, which brings us to another thread in this story. Patents are granted by governments to individuals and corporations that need to protect their inventions. It's especially important in the pharmaceutical industry to protect innovation when bringing a pharmaceutical drug or product to market can be extremely expensive. Investors need to know that they have a chance to recoup that investment during a patent. Patent litigation is also a main feature of the pharmaceutical landscape. I mean, for example, right now, Moderna is suing Pfizer and BioNTech for patent infringement, while also being sued by the NIH and Arbutus Pharmaceuticals for the same. These disputes are worthwhile because patents are your most valuable asset. But is patent infringement really the main risk? The Agreement on Trade-Related Aspects of Intellectual Property Rights, called TRIPS, is an international agreement that provides basic patent rights coordinated across the globe. The World Health Organization governs this structure. And while COVAX was struggling a bit, India and South Africa launched an application for a patent waiver for COVID-19 technologies. This waiver would have removed all of the patent rights for COVID-19 technology. In June of 2022, a partial waiver was granted. It was widely considered too little too late at this time, but it did pave the way for future applications for patent waivers. Vaccine inequity and delays have already done real tangible damage though. Experts estimate that over $9.2 trillion were lost to the world economy. Millions of people were plunged into poverty, and over 1.5 million excess deaths are attributed to that delay in access. The World Health Organization supports the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, which asks us to strive for healthy healthcare for all people across the globe and a vibrant economy and reduced inequity. COVID-19 tested us, we failed.
So today, what role is Moderna playing in this systemic inequity? Well, Moderna has 3 areas of research. There's latent and public health vaccines, respiratory vaccines, and personalized medicines. That means Moderna was in a perfect position when the COVID-19 pandemic came along to develop the Spikevax at record pace. And you did. You brought it to market faster than we've ever seen before. We know that most of those doses went to wealthy countries. This is the way that the pharmaceutical industry operates today, and that gulf in vaccination that developed early has not been solved yet. Even today, COVID vaccination has not equalized between lower and high income countries. We know that going forward, a change in Moderna's distribution strategy could make a huge ethical global impact. Moderna is not blind to the issues. You have made some statements that you're looking at some of these inequity issues. The first, looking at not enforcing patents in some low-income countries, COVID-19 technologies in particular. Unfortunately, while you're providing production capabilities to these countries, you're not providing the knowledge that they need to actually bring a product to market. On the other hand, the mRNA Access Program has been announced, where Moderna is looking at sharing some of the research and development knowledge and expertise with independent researchers. However, Moderna holds those patent rights and is restricting production. So again, those products are not coming to market. Ultimately, Moderna's current approach is not forming true partnerships that are addressing vaccine inequity issues. So now, Moderna is at a crossroads. You have a choice. If you continue with the pharmaceutical distribution model that is ubiquitous amongst your industry, you'll be continuing to contribute to unethical vaccine distribution and widening the gap in global inequities. Your other option is to look at shifting to an ethical vaccine distribution supply model. This is going to create a more ethically defensible vaccine access program, and also it reorients Moderna to your company mission. Your mission is to deliver the greatest possible impact to people through mRNA medicines, and you can't do that only in high-income countries. So we know that we want to set for you a strategic roadmap to make Moderna a purpose-driven pharmaceutical leader. If we want to do this, we know that that portfolio of ethically maintained patents is going to be an important piece, and you're also going to need a knowledge-sharing strategy that protects your business and helps address the inequities. The solution that we're bringing to you today is the mRNA Services Platform. We want you to develop selective licensing agreements with global impact through the World Health Organization. This will help you make the biggest impact using mutual beneficial contracts and push Moderna towards purpose-driven profit. This is your this is your business model today. So fairly linear. You'll have a product you're working on researching. Was possible, those patents are put in place and testing is done. We move into the manufacturing, and then those products are funneled into sales and distribution. This is standard across your industry. We're suggesting you add a second stream. Once you have the research and development in place and the patents secured, we want you to reach out to the World Health Organization Knowledge Transfer Hub and start helping them understand what you have to offer so that they can help you source agreement sponsors and producers that can carry out selective licensing for manufacturing generic Moderna products. These would be available from these producers in contracted geographical areas that Moderna is not currently able to supply themselves.
So the first piece of our plan is where and who to license to in order to make the biggest impact. So we know that patents bring a lot of good. They incentivize ethical innovation of life-saving technologies such as mRNA vaccinations. They also allow companies to take bigger risks with a safeguard on their profits. And these profits can also facilitate self-funded research and development. Patents also enable competition from smaller companies in industries that have powerful competition. This did contribute to Moderna's success in the big pharma landscape. And in the realm of healthcare specifically, patents allow for the exploration of smaller patient population diseases that typically have limited funding and resources. And lastly, patents can help manage liability and the proper use of technologies that have these patents. But there is a downside to patents. There's a direct ethical issue surrounding patent misuse, which the COVID-19 pandemic did bring to light. So first, when we consider doing good for others, we saw companies that were prioritizing profits over health. Alternatively, a licensing model such as the one that we're proposing today could have provided a path that would have allowed for both profits and health. Second, ethics would dictate that we should avoid harm to others at all costs. However, delayed vaccine access resulted in 1.5 million excess deaths during the COVID-19 pandemic. And this was directly related to obstructed patent waivers. Once this technology was developed, it should have been shared in order to minimize as many deaths as was possible. And when we consider ethical distribution, there was a conflict of rights between patent holders and access to health, where contracts were awarded to companies based on economic status rather than risk and need. So there's also a direct ethical issue surrounding the concentration of vaccine inequity in these low-income countries. So what we have here is a map of the world that's showing the percentage of populations across all countries that have received at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. And clearly, they're very much concentrated in these higher income countries. And specifically, if we look at Africa, we can see that more than 50% of the population in the majority of African countries are still completely unvaccinated. And this is as of March 13th of this year. So we know that low-income countries were left behind during the pandemic, with little to no help from higher income countries. And there was also a lack of reciprocity. And what I mean by that is South Africa contributed valuable clinical trial data to the world pandemic effort, and in return, they were unable to secure fair pricing agreements on vaccine contracts. And if we look past COVID-19, we know that there are many diseases with potential mRNA solutions, some of which that you are currently working on in your pipeline, such as Zika, HIV, TB, and malaria. And these diseases are all most prevalent or still highly prevalent in these lower income countries, such as those within Africa. So what this tells us is that by focusing initially in Africa, we can have the biggest impact on closing the gap on vaccine inequity. So we know that licensing can provide an ethically defensible path towards closing the gap on inequity and can allow Moderna to make the biggest impact to this movement. So how can we do this? We know that Moderna holds mRNA patents in South Africa, which has restricted mass production from Afrigen and the World Transfer Hub. We do know that you're not currently enforcing patents that are related directly to COVID-19. However, you are still maintaining those patents for all other mRNA applications. So we also know that the Knowledge Transfer Hub has been successful in developing effective mRNA technologies. However, their biggest barrier to mass production and taking these solutions past clinical trial remains to be your patents. So we know that the World Transfer Hub, or the Knowledge Transfer Hub, and the WHO desperately need to find a path to get past your IP in order to take their solutions to mass production. And so licensing directly through them can enable a mutually beneficial partnership that can create the most effective pipeline to these lower income countries.
Thank you, Jordy. So I think Jordy laid out for us that there's a clear ethical imperative for action. I want to dive a little deeper into some of the legal implications of these solutions, however. We touched on some of the complexity earlier, but I want to bring back the concept of patent waivers. That patent waiver pathway does remove a lot of control from Moderna's hands. If your patents were waived in other countries to allow more access, this would mean that you would not have the control that a voluntary licensing program can provide. You can choose your partners and you can share your legal and financial risks across stakeholders. We're not suggesting that there's anything illegal or broken laws about the current strategy. However, patents can do a little bit more for you. Licensing is a perfectly legal and ethically sound way to pursue profit while also optimizing your business model. We're going to get into that a little bit later. As well, licensing is entirely permissible under that TRIPS framework that we talked about. In fact, it allows you to avoid some of those more drastic measures like patent waivers. We also know that those ongoing lawsuits that we mentioned could remove some of your current control on your patents if your challenges were unsuccessful. However, our model actually allows for reduced risk in the future because we're going to have very clear, upfront patent discussions with partners, and we are emphasizing long-term relationships. So the pathway to this licensing model has many steps, but let's start with which of your products are going to be the best candidates for licensing. We're not suggesting your entire portfolio move in this direction, but RSV, HIV, Zika, these kinds of diseases have very high health impacts with large populations in low and middle income countries. Once you have a good candidate, for example, your HIV product is coming soon, we would reach out to the WHO and suggest that you define the market that you're willing to have licensed product be distributed in. With HIV concentrated in Africa, Afrigen is a really natural, well-organized partner for this strategy. They can reach markets that you're going to struggle to reach. As well, freeing up capacity in your own internal manufacturing plants for higher value products that you have in your pipeline as well. Obviously, minimum standards would be a part of this notification or parameter setting from Moderna, but we'd also suggest that you can accelerate the time to production and improve quality by reaching out and working with these partners to transfer knowledge. You're also benefiting because you're creating true partnerships rather than a contracting model. We're asking our partners to have a real stake in the outcomes here. And they're going to also have their own innovations that will improve the manufacturing process, and you'll be able to participate in those innovations. All of these benefits across your stakeholders are going to be defined in contract terms. Moderna benefits from new fees and royalties, as well as reduced liability and those clear patent expectations. Partners like Afrigen have unimpeded access to your technology without having to worry about patent infringement. There's also a role here for government organizations. The African Union is a coalition of African countries. They would provide a guaranteed market for these licensed products, taking some of the risk out of the development and licensing process. As well, sponsorship from higher income countries or COVAX itself would provide that last bit of incentive to bring a phase 2 or phase 3 drug all the way to market in a licensing model. Consultation provides ongoing relationship building with all of these stakeholders and creates a virtuous cycle that's going to drive new innovations in your manufacturing processes, but also frees up capital for reinvestment in your R&D and diversifies your product line away from that single product focus of Spikevax. This is overall an accelerated innovation strategy that's going to help you leapfrog over some of your biggest competition and really stabilize those expectations for Moderna going forward.
Yeah, so as we shift our attention to the financial and business aspects of our plan, it's really important to understand where Moderna is today. The last 2 years have been incredibly successful, resulting at the end of fiscal 2022 with over $18 billion in cash and investments, and you've been able to recently do some stock buybacks and return over $3 billion to your investors. However, when we turn our eyes to the future, there is a lot of uncertainty in the top line right now. With this single product portfolio, increased government scrutiny, and increase in competition, like we just mentioned, through partners like Afrigen, the future is very uncertain. And shifting this perspective to your cash flow as well, like we mentioned, you're in an excellent position today, but the next 3 years are expecting very heavy investments in your R&D pipeline, as well as that footprint expansion. And this doesn't yet account for any litigations, any M&A activity, and additional returns to shareholders. So you're in a great position today, but it is expected to deteriorate. Strategically allocating this capital is going to be critical for Moderna's long-term success. And when we think about the allocations related to manufacturing investments, we know that the payback associated with those investments in high-income countries are going to continue to be very attractive. But only 20% of the world's population resides in those countries and would have the most immediate and feasible access to those vaccines. So what we're suggesting here is that licensing will help us fill the gap in the other 80% of the population to ensure that we can access the globe. So we're looking at prioritizing our internal manufacturing capacity for our higher margin personalized medicines, the gene editing, the cancer vaccines you're currently working on. Licensing in the underserved markets to create increased reach, and infusing our R&D with the sponsorships that we can receive globally by approaching this model and attacking those markets. So when we look at an example, HIV is an excellent opportunity in your current pipeline as a promising candidate. With licensing, we'll get the flexible capacity to attack Africa early in this 24-month sprint. And while we attack Africa, we know that that is going to reduce the risk globally. We know that no one is really safe until everyone is safe from diseases. So what this is going to do is allow us to prioritize by need in a way that we cannot today with our existing footprint. From a profit perspective, we only see about 3% of the total revenue coming from licensing. However, it falls through in an excellent gross profit at 4% of the profit. Overall, your portfolio margin will remain at just over 70%, very similar to where you are today from a COVID perspective. HIV is just one example of a very healthy, promising pipeline with clear licensing candidates. We expect you can maintain over 70% gross margin on this portfolio by adding this licensing component. And just recently, you've announced that your initial mission as Moderna has been accomplished. You've delivered on the promise of mRNA technology. Delivering on this promise took an incredible amount of risk, an incredible amount of investment. We needed to demand high returns for these shareholders, these stakeholders who took this risk. However, continuing to prioritize returns could contribute to and lead to additional inequity. So as we move into your current new mission to bring the greatest possible impact, we believe that an ethical lens must be applied. So we're suggesting adding some equity metrics, both in a need to capacity ratio and a general equity vaccination rate by country income level, to both internal and external